I just couldn't, before we get into the show, I just couldn't let this go unremarked upon. I had another tab open on the other screen. This has nothing to do with what we're talking about on episode 213.
Okay.
But just the pettiness of this title. So this is a clip on MSNBC, a clip from MSNBC on YouTube. And the title is, and I can't see the whole title because it cuts off, but it says, oh yeah, here it is. Trump outshined. Harris Oprah event stuns with Meryl Streep, Ben Stiller, and Chris Rock. It's like a fucking 13-year-old wrote this. Like, oh yeah, but we outshined you because we got bigger names and people at our thing, and you suck. And
how much did you have to pay for them to be there, by the way? Can we bring that up, MSNBC? Do you ever bring that shit up? No.
The cost of their dignity?
Because obviously, if all the celebrities are on my side, I'm the correct leader. Let me just think about all the fucking things that I could bring up that have nothing to do with leading a country, and I'm going to put those forth, and that's why you should elect me. There you go. I have lots of friends, and he doesn't.
It's just like they couldn't even say like, oh, big Harris Oprah event with Meryl Streep. No, it's Trump outshined, and then so on.
Oprah's
and so forth.
A Democrat? No. Go on, Dane.
Such losers. Anyway, welcome to Weapons of Meme Destruction
podcast.
Podcast episode 213, which can be found at WMD Podcast 213.
There you go. I got the second one though.
You can find this episode at WMDpodcast.com/213. You can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction, and you can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and X.
Sorry, you hit 1.5x on that one. You got through that one with no hiccups.
Folks. I that couldn't go unremarked upon. The intro was playing and I was looking, I was like, can you believe these people? So
I was just going to mention that I threw up in my mouth while we were in our what would you call that? The green room, I guess, the like little playing? 30-second, like the and then the intro music. Yeah. Like,
yeah. It's just all the intro. You can,
the intro. Yeah. So we're off to a rocky start today, Dan. We're going to have to pull it together, man.
I think we'll be good. So we're recording this one a bit in advance because yours truly is going to be out at our normal record time. So again, we always,
calamities don't usually happen when he leaves, only when I leave. True. So we'll be fine.
However, if they do, and they go unremarked upon by your humble host here for a couple of weeks, and you're like, man, aren't the boys going to talk about X, Y, or Z? That's why. Just wait till episode 214. And we'll get to it.
You're not even gonna know how good it is.
Which is all the more reason why, if this is the first time you're here, you should be subscribing, and sharing so that you don't miss 214 when it comes out. And
there's no way in hell that you listened to all the other 212 episodes of Weapons of Meme Destruction. So you got a whole back catalog to go. All right.
And if you didn't, shame on you.
And you know what? We're fun to hang out with. Just replay it and just like all those old. Oh, remember the time? Oh, let me go back to episode 135 where.
Remember the time when COVID was absolutely insane and the boys were the only people talking sense to us in the entire world?
Time?
You're welcome, guys. So anyway, not burying the lead any further, this week we're discussing a couple myths. We're destroying a couple memes. The first one is this concept of the rational voter. And there's actually a social, what's the word I'm looking for? The study of sociology. There's a sociological term for called rational ignorance, and we're going to discuss that a little bit. And then we're going to use another graphic. I forgot to mention there's a graphic for the first one and for the second one. This the deregulation boogeyman, right? Anytime something bad happens in the world, it must be that our wise overlords in government weren't regulating it hard enough. Regulate me harder, daddy. And that's the reason why all hell went. Everything went to hell in a handbasket. So we're going to discuss those two things. We hope not to turn you into nihilists. We don't want you to come out of this episode thinking, well, then all hope is lost. But it helps in order to understand the world, to kind of understand the unmolded clay that you're working with, and then you can approach it in a little bit more of a reasonable manner, and so that the insanity hopefully doesn't make you yourself go insane.
The insanity makes you go insane.
No, we hope that the world's insanity doesn't make you go insane.
Yeah, you got to make sure you're connected. The writing's
If we're
on the
not
wall.
doing anything here, we are building the sane space.
But if you're
nothing else,
it's neglected. Stumble, you might fall. A stumble, you might fall.
get him, David. Get him. Lyricalize them.
I don't think. What was that? MC Stereo or some shit like
David
that?
is the Shakespeare of our times.
That wasn't me. I'm not claiming that. I don't even know what the fuck it means. If you make sure you're connected, the writing's on the wall. But if your mind's neglected, stumble, you might fall. A stumble, you might fall. Like,
yeah, I'm gonna have to think. I'm gonna have to sit with that one for a
no
while.
fucking
Trying to
idea
make
what that
sense of
even
it.
means. The
Trying to make heads
90s
or
were
tails of
fun.
it.
Anyway,
Very heavily drug induced. So
yes,
the first meme we're destroying today is the myth of the rational voter, and I'm gonna. It's a little chart, and I promise we're not gonna bore you to death with charts. It's just one image, and for you audio only listeners, I'll describe it. The chart is a public opinion chart based on what the average person thinks is reasonable for quote unquote corporate profits. And there's 3 bars here. Actually, let me remove this banner so that the video watchers can see what it says down there. And it's a public opinion chart, and there's 3 bars. And the first question was what people think a quote unquote reasonable corporate profit is. I'm going to pause for a second, let you kind of think about it in your own head. You audio only listeners, you video guys already see it. What do you think would be a reasonable amount of profit for a company to make? Well, according to this chart, the average person thinks that it's 26%. Okay, fair enough. Now, next question, asking that same group of people. Now, what do they estimate is the actual corporate profit? So they think 26% is a fair amount for a company to make. And they think that the actual corporate profit is 36%. So on average, companies are making about 10% more than they should. So if you extrapolate from that, what should the tax policy be? Basically, just chop that top 10% off, and that should be corporate taxes. And then everybody's going to be happy because corporations are only going to be making 26% profit. They'll be, quote unquote, paying their fair share, according to the lefties, and everything will be great. Now, here's the kicker. What is the actual corporate profit? Do you think these people knew? They didn't. The actual corporate profit is 7%. So if you are a company doing pretty damn well for your industry and your sector, and again, we all know the horror stories of things like restaurants and grocery stores that operate on razor thin margins. We're talking like 2% is doing great, but it's usually like 1.5%, 1%, sometimes under 1%. The difference between them surviving or not is a few,
glasses of
cycles.
Chardonnay.
Yeah, it's very narrow for them. So a 7% actual corporate profit is doing pretty well. But I'm assuming from this graphic that is the average. So just to repackage that in a fewer words before we discuss the issue, people think 26% is fair or quote unquote reasonable. They think it's actually 36%, but what it really is 7%. So what's that? 400% less than what they think is fair is what the actual corporate profit is. So why does this describe the myth of the rational voter? David, you got any initial thoughts?
Well, I've got a couple of shots in the dark here. One, it's might be because they hear it all the time on the media that makes them educated, that they go out and repeat stuff, saying that we need to tax these corporations because they find their way around. And if we just tax them billions of dollars, then we're going to turn this whole country around. We're going to have millions of dollars for the streets are going to be paved in gold. There's gold in their minds. But no, I feel like that there's a lot of chattel and saber rattling about that. So they must think that, putting that together, if they're smart and they're telling me all the smart stuff, then I guess corporations make tons of money, which is, not to bury the lead, we have another 98% coming in hot. Another meme from the 98% over on Twitter, right, Dane?
No, this is from their Facebook page.
Oh, Facebook.
Potato. I'm sure they share the same stuff on both
same
platforms.
shit, different, toilet.
Yeah.
Coming in hot, saying exactly that. If they're the smart people, and they're telling you that these corporations are all corporation-y and they make money, so you're like, well, 26%, 36%. But if you actually took a second and thought about it, what do my investments look like? How much, if I'm killing it in 1 year, if I make, what's a percentage that is stereotypically synonymous with killing it in 1 year in the market? 10%,
I mean,
right? 10%.
Yeah, 8 to 10%,
8 to 10%,
return on your investment is
right.
you're doing really well.
Like you're smacking it out of the park. So if you would have just taken a second and thought about that, then applied it to, in all aspects of the market, then you would have probably been right. But no, if you just listen to the experts again, you're going to come up with these fucking weird ass numbers that you are then shocked to find out that it's nowhere near where you thought it was.
Yeah, that your estimate of what's fair or reasonable is about 400 times higher than what it actually is. Or sorry, not 400 times, 400%, 4 times. I'm not good with math. That's why I went to law school. So,
I didn't go to school at all.
I guess the low-hanging fruit here would be to say that the average person is dumb. There's plenty of that. We say our fair share of it. That's not fair. We're not here to judge so much because, again, all of these people, if 95+% of people are educated in the public indoctrination system, then that means that 95+% of your average everyday person walking down the street that you're going to talk to doesn't know anything about anything. And sometimes not even their fault because they're victims of educational malpractice. Now, again, as I said on episode 212, I don't cut a whole lot of slack there because, again, we do live in the age of information. So if you really wanted to know these things, you would search it out. But that point about searching it out actually gets to the sociological term for this, which is called rational ignorance. And what rational ignorance means is that you are just one person. You have 24 hours in the day. And your hours are allotted to the things that are most immediately necessary to support your basic survival and those of the people that you love and care about most. So you got to spend so many hours a day earning a paycheck, and you got to spend so many hours a day, budgeting,
I wonder if that's by design,
eating,
by the way.
sleeping, doing the basic functions that it takes to survive, right? So once you slice the pie, even if you are the top of the top of the top,
would you say the cream, Dane?
Yes.
Would you say the cream always rises to the top?
If you are the cream at the top of the, shall we say, politically informed, or hell, even just engaged, even if you don't consume that type of media all the time, the portion of your life that's dedicated to truly understanding these things is a tiny little sliver. So if you spent 8 hours a day for 12 years, K through 12, of suffering from educational malpractice where you don't even have the baseline facts correct, like this chart, this is telling you that if you want to have an opinion on what the corporate tax rate should be and what's fair and how much they're paying and how much they're not paying and all that kind of stuff, you need to at least understand the baseline facts of the matter. How much are they really making? Right? Because that other 93% that they're not making in corporate profits, that's all going to the production process of getting to you whatever it is, whatever widget that company is manufacturing, whatever good or service they're providing. So that 7% is what's left over after all of that's done. And so if you advocate for a policy that cuts so far into that company's budget that you start eating into that 93%, well, guess what? That company goes out of business. That means their employees are no longer hired. That means the good or service that you got from them that you enjoyed is no longer available. But for some reason
under Joe Biden, the employment rate goes up. It's amazing.
Yeah. When you fudge the numbers, you can make anything look like, you can make anything cute with enough lipstick.
It's just can we discuss that for a quick second? Well, first, I want to go ahead and, always being the olive branch on this, or trying to always be the olive branch on this show. I don't think that voters are dumb or people are dumb. I just think that they're busy, like you said. They just don't have the fucking time.
That's what the concept of rational ignorance is. So, sorry, I didn't close that loop.
Right.
So that's why it's called rational ignorance, is because people are acting rationally, right? When you spend 8 hours a day sleeping, you need that for your mental and physical health. When you spend 8 hours...
Apparently not, Dane. Here I am.
When you need 8 hours a day, working to provide for your family, those are all rational things. You are rationally allocating your time in a way that is most conducive to your immediate survival, not watching, whatever opinion Joy Reid has. So you are acting in a rational manner. You're not a stupid person, but you are ignorant of these kind of macro policies, these macro debates that these politicians say that, they sell you all these promises, you don't have the baseline information to be able to differentiate between whether this one is lying, whether they're actually do have good intentions, but just physically it's impossible for them to solve the problem they're alleging they're solving. You're just ignorant of those situations. And again, people all too often, they confuse ignorance and stupidity. They're not the same thing. No. Stupid is like, you're stupid.
It's IQ level.
Yeah. Ignorance is you just don't have the necessary information. Right. So that's what rational ignorance is.
I'm ignorant how to fix my car. Correct. I don't have the fucking time. Like
same, exactly.
Right.
There's a great many things we're ignorant of. The problem is when you have loud and vociferous opinions about things of which you're ignorant.
Yeah, that'd be like me kicking down the door in the mechanic shop and say, no, take that part out. The motor? Yeah, that's taking up too much space. Get that the fuck out of there.
Perfect analogy.
Oh, thank you. But again, over here, we like to give like little cheat sheets to everybody, and the spread of logic. I like to spread a little logic on every little subject, on every little breadcrumb that we have on the subject. So, if just to backtrack and try to bring this home, I like to always bring up that the politicians are lying. So all they're doing is like it's that Chris Cuomo video that he shot and at the DNC again. If the politician is sitting there saying he's going to tax the corporations a large amount because they're getting out from under it, and that's going to fix all of our problems, then who's going to pay for the seat that he's sitting in? Any takers? I mean, and again, going back to the Cuomo video, he pointed up at the box seats, and he says those are all filled. Every one of those boxes is $500,000 filled to the brim, and they're all clapping when she's saying that they're going to tax the rich and tax the corporations. Mm-hmm. Do you really think that number one, if that was the case, why wouldn't they have done that back in the 1980s, 70s, 60s?
Yeah,
anytime. In any decade.
What's the thing they've been running victory laps about the last couple of weeks, right? Something like 100 top CEOs are all lined up behind Kamala. Does it really sound like the rich are worried about that?
But no. And then all of a sudden, again, to go back to that and perfect analogy, I like that you didn't even do it on purpose, I don't think. And if you did, you're very clever. And I don't give you enough credit. But the thing that you're laughing about, I'll never give you the credit, by the way. You're never getting it. It'll be the most elusive thing, and it'll always be just out in front of it. It's like the dragon. You can chase it forever. You're never going to catch it.
It's like that State Farm commercial. Ooh, almost got it. Got to be quicker than that.
Oh, that's creepy. That creeps me out. Anyway, back to the thing that you were laughing about. Like, they're telling you to your face that they aren't you, but that they are. But their whole line is that they are you. We get it. It's groceries are expensive. Meanwhile, their whole MSNBC line is like, check it out. Beyonce's on our side, bitches. Oprah's on our side, bitches. All these multi-billionaires are with us. Like, okay. Are you going to tax them too? Or do they have a lot of money to get out from? Oh, okay. So they're all for paying taxes and paying all they want less money. They want less money. Just like Billie Eilish when she came out and said, oh, I can't believe I'm a millionaire now. I don't know how I'm gonna.
I don't know how to relate to my fans.
Attach to my fans anymore. It's like, well, there's a very simple way to fix this, Billy. Just take it and give it all away, and then we're right back to square one. Don't worry about that. But did she? I don't think so. So again, it's all this, and it always boils down to that. So when back to the rational voter thing, if you're not smart on the subject, or if you're ignorant on the subject, just take that little litmus test, dip it in that bullshit garbage that's coming out of their mouth, and if it turns brown, they're full of shit. They're absolutely full of shit. So the logic here is like, if all they had to do is tax the corporations an untold amount because they're getting out from under it each and every year. It's like, well, guess what? If I try to get out from under my taxes for 1 year, I'm going to fucking jail with a guy with a gun, by the way. 87,000 more of them are there to track me down. And I don't see any of these CEOs ever getting trailed up. You would see it all the time. Like just dudes getting let out of JP Morgan with their hands behind their back. Like never. It's never happened once. In fact, they fucked the entire market back in 2008. And you know how we punished them? You know how the government punished them for doing that, right?
Golden parachutes and
taking
bailouts,
our money
baby.
and giving it to them. Like Jesus Christ. So I give up.
You know, and there's this problem of ignorance is actually on two levels. So first, it's in the individual voter, right? Everybody, like I said, has so many hours in the day. You can only dedicate so much time to being educated on these policies.
Right.
And by the way, when you vote for a politician, right, very few politicians run on one or two issues, right? They have an opinion and they have policies on the whole smorgasbord. Like the same person knows everything about the domestic economy, the global economy, foreign policy, child health care, education. Like they have a policy for everything. So even if, the politician wasn't lying to you, even if the worst case scenario weren't true, when you vote for a politician, you don't get a vote policy by policy. You're voting for the whole slate of what they're talking about. And they might be super informed on economics and be just completely out to lunch on foreign policy and vice versa. So when you vote for one of these politicians, it's impossible to get one that, is going to have a cohesive, across the spectrum, the whole political spectrum, a cohesive set of policies that are going to be kind of interwoven, interlaced, and like aim towards the overall focus that the government is supposed to be to any extent it's legitimate, which is to raise the standards of living of the most people that are under its rule possible. You're never going to satisfy all 330 million Americans at the same time. But if you can raise the standard of living for 250 million of them, I guarantee, or I promise you that other math in public, 120 million or whatever, are going to also do a little bit better by proxy just because the other ones are investing in all of that kind of stuff. So that's the first level. The first level is the average voter can't possibly be informed, even if they dedicate as much of their free time as possible to educating on themselves to be able to make rational choices and not vote for politicians that are directly against their self-interest. The next level up, and here's the key insight, even if we assume that every politician is a complete angel, and what I mean by that is they are outside, they're cut from a different cloth from the rest of humanity. They don't operate on the same incentives and self-aggrandizement and self-interest that the rest of us do. And they are truly only after what they feel legitimately in their hearts is in the best interest of the people. Even in that reality, they could not possibly arrive at one-size-fits-all policies for 330 million people that is going to have the desired outcome, which is the most benefit to the most people. And again, Hayek wrote about this in his book, The Fatal Conceit. And it's because information in an economy, especially a society of 300 million souls, is so dispersed that even if you have the Politburo, right, in the Soviet Union, the idea was you have the wisest people in the Soviet Union collecting all the information, and they're setting prices and they're dictating what's here because they have the most information. Well, even if they have the most information possible, they cannot possibly have access to all of the dispersed information throughout the entire economy. And so the key insight to that is because that information is dispersed, that means all the individual actors within the economy, all 330 million of us, every time we buy and sell, every time we vote with our dollars, we vote with our feet to move to a different state that has better policies. Every time we simply act in our individual capacity, we are putting information out to the market as to what is valuable. And as more people, with their actions suggest course A is more valuable than course B, then the market steps in and meets the needs of course A. And then that's how standards of living rise for all. That dispersed information can never be known by one individual or small group of individuals. So even if the politicians were angels, they still could not arrive at the best policies for the most people because the information is so dispersed. And for that reason, you're never going to get good policies out of this type of system.
What's that old adage, Dane? The greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing humanity he didn't exist.
Yeah.
I think that kind of applies here with, your vote, like the whole opinion of the rational voter. It's like all Americans think that they only vote one time every 4 years, or maybe 2 years if they're on a voting for a senator or a House representative or something like that. So they've been conned into believing that they only vote once every 4 years, relatively, just for argument's sake. That's not true. What you just described is what the whole basis of your vote is. You have way more power in your everyday life than you ever do with one politician. Like, okay, just to give an analogy here, having one politician in one seat overseeing, like you said, 330 million of us, there's no fucking way that they could be absolutely Michael Jordan in every aspect. Michael Jordan, that would be like asking Michael Jordan, okay, you're really good at basketball. All right, he went and played baseball. Was he the best? No. He wants to be. I'm sure he'd love to be. Is he the best at golf? No. But I heard he's a dick out on the golf course and he's really competitive with it, but he's still not the best. Was he the best pool player? I don't know, but I'm sure he's a dick there. So again, I guess I kind of just use that platform to shit all over Michael Jordan. Sorry. My point being,
Mike.
he was the best at one thing. Now these politicians are coming in here and going, no, I'm Michael Jordan. I'm like the best. And I'm Michael Jordan in basketball. It's like, oh, are you also, Joe Montana in the NFL? Oh, of course. I throw for 400 yards. I throw a football over that mountain over there. I took state. If the coach would have put me out, I took state. I guess I should have said that in my Uncle Rico voice if you get the
drop the ball there.
Right. And then and I'm also Lionel Messi in soccer. Yeah, I did that just to get under your skin, Dane. Did it? Did it work?
Appreciate that.
Yeah. It hurt me too. It was a self-inflicted wound, my friend. But anyway, you get my drift. Is like you're literally acting like one guy. Again, it's childlike. One man is going to solve all. And then if you really do think that the president is going to solve all your problems, and this is democracy, they're going to save it everything. Like, no. So just vote with your dollars, do what's right for you, be engaged with what's important to you, your family, your friends, whatever, your dogs, your cats. I don't give a shit. Just do what's best for you and don't fuck with other people. And that's just basically America. Like, don't get in other people's way and enjoy your life. And that's the way we vote every day. And that's how this thing is built to work.
Yeah, and to the extent that engagement in the political process, because again, for most of us that do want to do exactly what David said, is just live our lives, be left alone, and then, by proxy, or, the corollary of that is also leaving other people alone, is to the extent you have to engage in the political process in a manner of self-defense so that all the people with the ignorant opinions don't rule over you and slap 100%, tax on Dane because they don't like the way his face looks. You should be voting for the politicians to the extent that any are out there, which I understand there are few and far between. But for the one that has the courage, courage might even be overstating it. For one that exudes the simple humanity in saying, I don't know. I don't know is a perfectly good answer for a politician to have, because truly and honestly, they don't know. And second of all, if they approach their office with that sort of humility, what are they going to do? They're going to say, listen, the information's out there. Agency X, Y, or Z, policy A, B, or C don't have the magic, answer to everything. And even if it does fix this one narrow myopic problem, we can't predict the 10 other unpredicted problems that result from it. So because we don't know, we're going to leave it open to as much freedom, as much individual human action, and trust the people to act in their own self-interest. Because, that's the other, and the kind of the final point I wanted to put on this from my end is there is nobody that is more of an expert on your life than you are. To use the whole Bernie Sanders thing, why do you need 30 different types of deodorant, right? And he was making that whole thing is, well, because you know what your scent is, and you know what smells good on you, and you know what is good at a good price range for you, and like all of these factors, these deciding factors. We don't
all watch Matlock, all right, Bernie? Fuck.
All of these deciding little factors that sometimes you don't even think, you just walk in the store and you just know what you need or what you want because you've lived your life and nobody else has. You know exactly what to go to, and you don't even think about all of those things, but you're the expert on your life. So to the extent that a politician admits they're not the expert on your life, and they're really the expert on nobody's life other than their own, they're no better than us, is to have the humility to say, I don't know, and therefore I'm going to leave it up to you. I trust you, the people, to be smart enough in acting in your own self-interest, provided you're not hurting somebody else or you're not taking their property, that you will do what's in your best interest. And then all of the needs are going to aggregate out, and people are going to get their needs met by pure market forces. If you get a politician that says that, or the closest to that, that's the one you want to vote for.
You just described Buddhism. Like, sometimes the best thing to do is nothing.
Yeah.
Just be. Like that. Right. I'd love for that to be I'd love for the president to not have to do a fucking thing. I'd love them to just sit there and, twiddle on their phone their entire presidency and not have to do a fucking thing. That'd be great. That would really be great. But yeah, here we are.
So the close cousin, closer than David and I, to the irrational voter is the deregulation boogeyman.
So would you say they're kissing cousins, Dane?
Yeah. Oh. Not the boogeyman itself, but the person who believes in the deregulation boogeyman. And you won't be shocked to learn that the offender this week is a repeat offender, the aggregator of all dumb shit on the left end of the political spectrum, the other 98%. They had a tweet or a meme earlier this week about a listeria outbreak in a Boar's Head factory. And so I'll just read this for the audio only listeners. It's a tweet from CNN that says, Boar's Head will close the Virginia plant that produced deli meat products tied to a deadly listeria outbreak, the company says. And then some guy named Michael Eaves over on Twitter, which of course 98% shares as if he made some tremendous insight about the universe that we would have never arrived at without his wisdom, says to that tweet, this is how deregulation costs jobs. So, first things first, David. Do you remember all those headlines from like the last month where CNN and MSNBC and Fox and everybody in the mainstream media was all worried about the massive deregulation that went on in food, health, and safety? You remember that? Like, I'm pretty sure like they shut down the USDA and the FDA and the Department of Agriculture, et cetera, et cetera. I'm pretty sure I saw that somewhere, right? And they just said, all hands are off, no more regulation on anything ever.
And then they came out with an affidavit that said people should use their butts to start farting on foodstuffs.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They replaced the whole pantheon of previous regulations with that one.
Like they took the food pyramid and just put a bunch of butts farting on it. That's what they did.
Although I believe that'd be E. coli, right? I don't really know what listeria is.
Oh, well, yeah, I wasn't trying to. They got that's my point, Dane. I'm playing 3D chess. It's the government, so of course they didn't even get that right. You wouldn't get E. coli, you'd get listeria. They couldn't even get that.
No matter what, I
can't work here. I can't work like this.
Listen, David, you gave me credit for a clever little bit before, so I gotta even it out by having one sail over my head. Okay,
you gotta eat a couple of paint chips to drop those numbers, right?
Exactly.
There you go.
So yes, if you did not catch the heavy laden sarcasm from David and I there has been no massive drop off in regulation between the week before this listeria outbreak at this Boar's Head plant and today. So before we even get in to just the sheer stupidity of that comment in relation to that tweet, it doesn't even mesh from a simple correlation causality situation, right? If you're going to claim that deregulation is the reason the thing happened, then the deregulation needs to happen before the thing happens, right?
By the way,
that's how a causal chain works.
The FAA
so if there's no deregulation, then how are you pointing to deregulation as the cause?
The FAA came out and said, hey, we're just going to take a couple of months off too. So Boeing, have at it. Just go, just fucking do whatever. No,
and that's why planes started falling out.
Right. So, duh, Dane, you big dumb dummy.
Or on the eve of the 2008 financial crisis, I forget the exact number, but Tom Woods makes this point a lot. On the eve of the housing collapse in 2008, I think at the federal, if you tally up all the federal, state, and local regulatory bodies, I'm not talking about regulations. I'm talking about bodies, like groups of experts,
Playoffs.
right? Economists and financial engineers and everything else. The regulatory experts, there was, I think, like 111 or 114, it was somewhere in the low hundreds, overlapping bodies of banking and financial regulation in the United States. So the point that Tom always makes about this is, let's just go with the lower number and say it was 111, is the point he always makes about this is, damn, if we just had that 112th body instead of 111, that would have been the difference between 2008 happening or not happening. Or if your IQ is,
go on, Dave,
slightly higher than a residential speed limit,
there it is.
You might think, well, with 111 different regulatory bodies overseeing this problem that developed, it seems that something fell through the cracks. Maybe these regulatory bodies were bamboozled, or maybe they didn't,
maybe those
they weren't exactly the
regulations weren't
sharpest tools
regulated
in the shed.
We needed to regulate the regulators to make sure that it's regulating regularly.
Yeah.
That's what we should have done.
And that didn't happen.
God damn it. We'll get them next time, champs.
So very similarly to banking and financial regulation, which in addition to healthcare and in addition to food safety, these are some of the most heavily regulated sectors of the entire economy. As opposed to the famous charts that you always see as like electronics, like handheld electronics, cell phones, computers, things like that are very lowly regulated industries. And when you see the divergence in chart between the capacity of those goods and services just shoot through the roof while their price is falling off a cliff, when you flip that around and you look at the industries that are the most heavily regulated, healthcare, finance, banking, food safety, blah, 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 you see the prices of those always rise and the quality goes down. So it's the exact opposite.
So you can still get Coca-Cola, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
As far as I can tell.
Yeah.
And what's that dye? Red dye number 50 or something? Yeah. That's literally like a neurotoxin.
40. I think it was 40.
40, that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, you can still get that, but you can't smoke weed because of the same people. So, again, a natural plant. You can't. I mean, we've gone over this. It's getting better, Dane. It's almost legal in most states. Okay, but Coca-Cola is legal wherever you can put it. Funny little side note: they use Coca-Cola because it's so acidic to clean off bloodstains, roadkill bloodstains. So, and they let you no regulation how much you can have of that. They'll tell you what you can put in your body with pot. You can't. But they'll tell you, God damn it, drink as much Coca-Cola. In fact, was it de Blasio that tried to... Who was the governor that tried to regulate how much you could drink? Like they couldn't sell 64 ounces of Coke anymore.
It was New York.
Rioted.
It was New York, but I don't remember if it was the state or it would have been de Blasio if it was at the city level. But if it was the state, I think it would have been Cuomo. But I think it was at the city level.
I remember. I think it was de Blasio.
Yeah,
pretty sure it's de Blasio. And people fucking rioted. Number one and number two, there's no amount of sugar they'll not let you put in your body. And now we're finding out more and more that sugar's pretty bad for you if you just recklessly consume it. So again, I yield the rest of my time to the counselor over there.
Yeah, and I mean similarly, so I pulled some of the numbers on just how highly regulated food is. So as we all know, Food and Drug Administration, they're tasked with ensuring the safety of domestic and imported foods. The U.S. Department of Agriculture regulates both safety and the labeling of meat, poultry, and certain egg products. And then there are over 3,000, it's not 111, there are over 3,000 state, local, and tribal agencies are responsible for regulating the retail food and food service industries. So,
what the fuck is a tribal agency?
Well, so like as you know, like on the reservations, because they're like,
oh, so it is Indian based.
Yeah.
Oh, shit,
Indian reservations. Yeah, Indian reservations under U.S. law have like a quasi separate state entity where like the federal government is the only one they have to answer to. Other than that, they regulate their own affairs.
Our bad. Maybe you should just go over there and enjoy yourself.
So anyway, that is the complex lattice work of the regulatory apparatus that currently exists that saw no repeal and no reduction between the week before the Boar's Head listeria outbreak and after. So again, just on this very surface level objection that deregulation caused this thing, it fails the causal connection test. But even the causal connection test
That's
aside, and this is where this segment kind of dovetails with the first segment, is the voter that doesn't have enough information to be able to assess whether a policy is actually in their own self-interest or not is also the Venn diagram between that voter and that voter who thinks that the regulatory bodies are just staffed with wise overlords that are dispassionately observing whatever industry they're regulating and doing what's ever in the best interest of the most people, and holding the corporations accountable, et cetera, as opposed to be, as public choice theorists will tell you, are completely captured by the industry they're supposed to be regulating. There's a revolving door between the regulators and the private companies they regulate. You hear about this all the time, especially in big pharma during the time of COVID. You would have FDA heads and tops
CDC,
of that agency would then go and take multi-million-dollar CEO
Pfizer,
and jobs at the big companies once they get their regulatory credentials, and then now
I think it was like a 98% too, right? Like 98% of the
for the revolving door.
Yeah, exactly. Like 98% of the people that were in the regulatory bodies went over to those companies upon their removal from the regulatory body.
Yeah. So, this idea that even if, deregulation was, not a boogeyman, but a real thing that was causing a real problem, this objection still also relies on an assumption that the regulators, A, are wise enough, again, C, are fatal conceit from the first segment, that they can't have all the information necessary to do it correctly anyway, even if they weren't a completely captured body. And that they don't have their own self-interest, where they're just looking ahead like, I better not turn the screws too much on this mega corporation because they might give me a sweet gig when I leave the FDA and give me several $1 million a year. Human beings respond to incentives. We say this all the time on the podcast. Just because they wear the hat of regulator doesn't make them any different, any more angelic, any cut from any different type of cloth than the rest of us. So again, this idea that, deregulation causes job loss, as this person was worried about, is a complete myth, complete boogeyman, and consider it destroyed.
And again, their own fucking messaging is completely off. Corporate greed is what leads to job loss. When you start overlooking things that you're supposed to be doing as a proper company and you start cutting corners to make more profits, that's when you put out a bad product, you hurt a bunch of people, and then you lose a bunch of jobs. So going all the way back to where we started, them saying they're going to tax the goddamn rich, they're going to tax all these corporations, instead of blaming fucking regulations or deregulation for leading to bad outcomes, leading to job loss, blame bad leadership of the corporation for job loss. Blame the team captain for blame the quarterback for throwing a pick. Don't blame the fucking fans. I don't get where any of this is going, but I don't know. It just seems like they're intentionally blind. I guess you just kind of have to listen to the verbiage and then watch what they do.
Yeah. I mean,
what a concept.
It is all a function of, like we said, that schoolhouse rock version of government.
Right.
That all these kids, again, 95% plus in the United States are educated in public indoctrination camps. So again, this is another point that Tom Woods likes to make, right? If Walmart ran all of the schools, and instead of presidents being on the walls in the hallways of the schools, you had all the past CEOs of Walmart, and everything these Walmart-run schools taught is that Walmart does everything right and they're perfect and blah, 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 you would reasonably look at that and be suspect. But when the government runs the schools and you have presidents on the wall, and the government-run schools always say, bad thing happened at some time in the past, and the reason why bad thing happened is because government wasn't sufficiently involved in it, so government needs to step in, and government always does the right thing, and blah, 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 right? That's the standard historical narrative that you get from public schools. Then it makes sense that when these people grow up to be adults, they don't have any clue as to how the real world works, and they always have this sort of Pollyanna type view in their mind about how government actors and regulators, how they operate, is that these are just wise public servants. And yes, they're human beings. So sometimes they make mistakes, but they're always their guiding star is always to do what's in the best interest of the people. And that is just fundamentally not true. And all you need is a 5-minute eyeball test and a tiny little bit of critical thinking, which again, the government schools are also not encouraging very much, because
and a memory longer
that
than a
means
goldfish.
people like David and I exist, and you exist, the sane spacers, and they don't much care for us that if we look at what the government claims and look at it critically. But anyway, just with a 5-second eyeball test and a little bit of critical thinking, you can completely disabuse you of that entire 12 plus years of propaganda that you got in your state-run schools. But again, even that minimal amount of effort is just too hard for some people to do. And they just prefer their comfortable lies and they just lean into them every time. And they put out tweets like that.
Yeah. Well, and again, I won't belabor the point too much more, but usually just to bring it all home, from all the way from financial corruption and them trying to, tax the rich, which they're never going to do, all the way down to just policies on gay marriage. Like, these politicians are just even more corrupt than a normal person, I'd argue, because what always happens? What's the Murphy's Law here? Whenever a politician comes out vehemently against something and standing in its way, they're found in a fucking Minnesota bathroom tapping their toe.
You love that story.
It's just so...
It's very indicative of the whole situation. Yeah.
Like, it's point A, point B. Right, exactly. And they're not even... And if you think that they're actually smarter than you, and I'd always say this on the podcast too, they're not. They're just good at bullshitting people a lot more, and they know a lot more people with a lot more money that were willing to put their corrupt little asses in that seat
to give their bullshit a megaphone that you and I don't have, right? Because when a sitting congressman or whatever says some crazy shit that has no basis in reality, they get microphones put in front of their face. You and I say crazy shit, well, what the regime would consider crazy. We get silenced, we get nuked, we get permabanned from whatever website and blah blah blah. So there is definitely a power imbalance in the sense of the flow of information, and their lies get the loudest megaphones possible, and are, if you don't even want to call it truth, are just at least I'll put it this way, our attempts to grapple with reality as it is. Our attempts to look at the world, what is going on, think about it critically, have an opinion, put it out there, let the other, marketplace of ideas, shoot it down or confirm it or whatever. And that's what we're trying to do. If you don't want to call that truth, I will say that we are truth seeking. If we don't always find it, at least that's what we're trying to do. Right. Whereas, like we said on 212, that's not even their goal. Their goal is to lie and lie as much and audaciously as possible just to keep you confused and in a constant state of chaos.
We've apologized a couple of times when we got something wrong too, which shows that we're human and that we're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, because
we'll point it out when we get it wrong. Like,
to the extent David and I are normal, I will say normal, well-adjusted people have the capacity, A, for self-reflection, and B, the humility to admit when they're wrong.
Right.
And we have been wrong about stuff.
Go ahead and pull up that clip of any politician apologizing for getting something wrong. Let me put a caveat. That wasn't caught red-handed doing the exact thing that he shouldn't have been doing. That used to happen, actually, by the way.
Or their apology wasn't just some sort of mealy-mouthed backhand non-apology anyway. Like, what was the one I showed you the other day where the guy was, it was like the New York City health inspector.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Right. So New York City health inspector.
You're misrepresenting my actual being there, but I was actually there.
The New York City health inspector during the time of COVID that was telling everybody to stay home was caught on video going to sex parties.
Sexing it up to say.
And he didn't deny.
He was wearing a mask, though. He was wearing a mask. It's okay. COVID only gets you when you're not wearing it.
He did not deny the veracity of the videos, but he did say that they were taken out of context. The point is,
What
you're
context?
telling
What's the context?
the point
that you
is,
were there?
you're telling everybody not to even just like, I don't know, go to grandma's funeral.
Right.
You know, something that's at
See
least
their dying loved ones one last
an
time.
important life event that you can never get
Birth.
back. And you're going to sex parties, which I'm sure once the COVID stuff dies down, you can have your sex parties again. That's fine. Nobody's judging you. But you can't at the same time be saying you can't go to grandma's funeral and then you're out going to sex parties. There's no context needed there. If you did the thing, you did the thing. So anyway, that's what I was saying. Like, even when you do get, you know, somebody copping to it or somebody saying, yeah, okay, you got me.
I wonder
it's
if they
always
just
some
have
backhanded bullshit.
I wonder if they just have Shaggy perma playing in the fucking in every house of Congress that's from state level all the way up to federal. Just like, wasn't me. Caught me banging on the subwoofer. Wasn't me. Caught me lying on camera. Wasn't me.
So, that being said, David, have we destroyed the myth of the rational voter and the deregulation boogeyman?
Well, who wants to be a rational person in these times?
Are those memes destroyed?
The only, of course, well, I'd hope so, but I'm sure they'll come back. Well, if they aren't destroyed, I'm sure we haven't destroyed them. We're just chiseling away at them. But eventually, once you chisel enough, constant pressure, Dane, they might finally topple. Constant pressure. And we're going to be there to constantly pressure this goddamn...
For as long as YouTube allows us to exist.
Well, yeah, exactly. But
so,
where can they find this episode 213 of Weapons of Meme Destruction Podcast?
Yeah, they can get this episode at wmdpodcast.com/213. They can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. They can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and X. Link up with us on our other socials, X, Instagram, TikTok. They can join the private members only Facebook page at $5 a month or more of support. While you're over at WMDpodcast.com, on the Support Our Work tab, you can see all of the other ranges of options to support the show. We have a Bitcoin link down in the comments on where you get the video, so you can donate Bitcoin to us. But, you know, if I know times are tough for everybody, and sometimes a donation of one time, a monthly, whatever it may be, is a little bit too tight for a lot of people's budgets, and we completely understand that. So just simply liking, subscribing, sharing, getting in those comment sections, telling your friends and family about us, you know, help growing the Sane Space one subscriber at a time is more than enough, and we thank you for your service. So with that being said, David, we'll see the people on 214, and hopefully the world hasn't fallen apart by then.
And until then, guys, stay safe, but more importantly, stay free.